So authjs integration saves sessions in a cookie by default. So technically using a database is optional, but because we want to persist user information in our own database, we're going to need to implement a database adapter. Below is the official list of adapters by authjs. You can always use a database adapter that isn't listed here, but for our project, we're going to be using Prisma. As we're following the documentation, we'll need to start by installing Prisma. So the first command we'll run is to install Prisma. Then we'll want to install the Prisma Client. The last command we'll run is npx prisma init. This command should initialize a Prisma directory in our project. Now, if we head back to the auth.js documentation, we need to install the Prisma client and also the auth Prisma adapter. And we'll also need to install Prisma. Next, we'll need to update our environment variables with our database URL. In this project, we're going to be using Mongodb as our database of choice. So once you've logged into mongodb.com, you'll want to create a new project. Feel free to name your project whatever you like. Next, you'll want to set permissions, then create the project. You'll be redirected to the Create a Cluster window. Select the free tier cluster and be sure to select the region that's closest to you. After the configuration screen is updated, click on Create Deployment. From here, you'll need to set a password and then you'll create a database user. Now back at the connection cluster, we want to capture our database URL. So click on MongoDB for VS Code and you'll want to copy the connection string as shown here. And if you have the show password toggle, it's going to automatically include the password in the cluster string. If we go back to VS Code and click on the .env file, let's remove the database URL string that's listed by default, and let's paste in the copied connection string that we just created. And at the end of this string, let's go ahead and include the database name in our MongoDB cluster. For this project, I've kept the name as test. Let's click save and close out the .env file. And now back in the auth.js documentation, next up, we want to bring in the Prisma client. So the documentation suggests that the Prisma client be included within the auth.js file. We're going to make one modification to this and separate the client into its own file because we do want to use it throughout the application. So back in VS Code in our root directory, let's add a folder named lib. And within it, add a file named prisma.js. Within it, we want to include the connection string that's going to initiate the Prisma connection with our database. Once you have this code, be sure to save the file. And then back in the auth.js, first, let's import the Prisma adapter. Then we'll need to include the adapter inside of nextauth. And as you can see, the adapter is passing in Prisma. And we want to use the Prisma connection from our lib directory. Let's remove the M&A from Prisma and let's auto import it. Be sure that you're importing it from the lib directory. Now let's save this file. For this project, we're not going to be impacted by the Edge compatibility, so we're not going to worry about implementing the workaround. But what we do need is the schemas for our database model, and we're going to be using MongoDB. So we'll click on the MongoDB accordion and we'll copy this. Now back in VS Code in the root directory, let's click on our Prisma folder, and within it, we're going to click on the schema.prisma file. We can just go ahead and remove all of the code that's listed here and paste in the code that we copied from the auth.js directory. And you may notice that you're getting an error within the authenticated model. We can just remove that one because we'll not be using that in this project. And scroll all the way back up to the user model and let's remove the authenticator from it. And you should no longer be getting an error within the schema.prisma file. So let's just save this file and close it out. Next up, we'll need to apply the schema to our database. So now within our terminal, let's type in the command npx prisma db push. What this is going to do, provided we don't have any errors in our connection to MongoDB, this is going to push the models that we just created to our database. So we'll click on apply. And if we received any errors, we would not have received that apply notification. And we'll also notice the errors within our terminal. So everything looks good. And finally, we want to type in the command npx prisma generate. And as you can see, it is successfully using the Prisma client in our node project. So now let's go ahead and run npm run dev to spin up our local host. And if we refresh to confirm that it is up and working, we see our frame of motion animation Let's go ahead and sign into our project. Once we've successfully signed in, we should see the logout button. Now let's confirm that the user is saved within our MongoDB cluster. So within MongoDB, click on Database, and then let's click on Browse Collections. Once our database is loaded, you'll see that we have 4 collections listed. And if we click on User, we see that the user that we just logged in with is now saved within MongoDB. There you have it, how we save our logged in auth.js user into a MongoDB database. I hope you enjoyed today's video and found it useful. If so, please feel free to give me a like. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Love you, man.